Hi everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Ungrownups video transmission. I'm your host Mark, and today we're going to be taking a look at Marvel Legends Iron Man 3 Wave 2. Series 2? Wave 2? Whatever. This is the second series of Iron Man figures to come out in the Marvel Legends Marvel Iron Man exclusive line. This is the what's known as the Ultron Wave. Comes with Ultron, of course, and the Mark 42, made so popular in Iron Man 3, and the new Iron Patriot, which is War Machine 2.0. You know, I've seen a lot of really good reviews on these figures, and from what I understand, these are the two standout figures in this whole entire series. As you can see, we get both the left and right arm of the comic version of the Ironmonger, and spinning it around here on the back, you can see you know, a couple of shots of the figures. Like that, the artwork that they give us is actually a drawing of War Machine, which is pretty cool. You see both of the figures in action, then you see the other figures in the wave, and where the build-a-figure parts actually go, and which ones they make. So let's get these two guys opened up and take a closer look. Okay, taking a look at these guys a little bit closer, I can tell you that first and foremost, these are the standout figures in this line. I really do wish that these two figures in particular had come out in the first wave of Iron Man figures as opposed to the ones we got, and I think I would have been far more excited about this line. I gotta tell you, these are some of the best paint apps that I've seen on an Iron Man figure. Both of them, they're both sort of cast in this really cool, like, pearlescent under plastic sort of color. Like, I believe that this figure here is cast in all red plastic, and then the gold parts are painted on, and likewise with here, it's all cast in a very pearlescent blue plastic, and the silver and red parts are painted on. And there's probably a mix and match of that. I think maybe his hands here are cast in red. But there's just a really good job of casting the paint and then actually painting the actual applications on the figures. They look really cool. Except for some minor touches here and there, minor gripes about the paint. I would say overall, these are some of the best painted Iron Man figures I've ever seen. And talk about articulation, and we'll get to that in a minute. These figures are just really awesome. Really glad to finally get my hands on them, and I thought I was going to have to order them online because they were just not showing up in stores, but luckily I found them this week at Target, so really cool, and they were much cheaper than they were at Toys R Us and Walmart. I think these guys ran about $15 at Target, whereas Walmart they were $17, and Toys R Us they were $19.99, believe it or not, a piece. That's absolutely ridiculous. But let's zoom in a little bit closer and take a look at each one in detail. Okay, starting with the Mark 42, you'll see right off the bat, about the only complaint I have with the paint apps on this guy are going to be his eyes. I just think they're a little too blue. They're a really bright blue. And the arc reactor glow on his chest is really subtle. I think I would have rather had his eyes be a little closer to this arc reactor color. But other than that, you can just, just scanning down the figure, you can see that the paint apps are absolutely amazing. The little silver touches here on the abdomen, tiny little silver touches here on the thighs, and of course, you're going to see some sloppiness here and there. I mean, they are mass production action figures, but like right there, you can see some. But just, little touches of silver underneath the kneecap there. And you can see the sculpting and the detail on this guy is just absolutely fantastic. I think I'm going to be passing on the Hot Toys version of this Iron Man, so I'm really glad I have at least a 6-inch version to add to my shelf, because I do want to sort of commemorate the Mark 42 and Iron Man 3. It was quite funny. Going over the articulation here, whoa. All right, I think I took his head a little too far back. You can see his head does tilt back quite a bit, which is really cool. You can see that it is on a swivel joint and a ball, so you can get a pretty good range of motion as far as like head up, head down, which is really nice. It's a lot better than the classic Iron Man that we got in the first wave of this line. You can see that the shoulder pads are not hinged in any way, but they are attached to the shoulder. So that does hinder somewhat the articulation, but the arms are on a pin socket, and they have a bicep swivel, double jointed elbow, which is really nice, which is really cool. Contemplative. definitely. Contemplative? I don't know what I'm talking about. The hand is on both a ball joint and an up and down joint here, which is really cool. And it does have a pretty soft rubber arm guard here on his hand that, as you can see, does kind of give a little bit when you tilt the hand back. But with that being a fist and not a repulsor hand, that does little. I think that joint's a little wasted. The only other paint app problem I wish that I can point out is that I really do wish that the arc reactor, not the arc reactor, the repulsor on his hand, I sort of wish that had been painted. But as it goes, you can get a pretty good pose out of that hand. I just really do wish that hand was painted. That would have been really nice. You do have a really nice, and you could probably hear this if I stop rambling for a minute. You have a really good sort of ratchet joint inside the torso, no waist articulation, and then you've got your standard pin socket leg, thigh swivel. You have double jointed knees, which is just absolutely amazing, and then you do have an ankle joint and a pretty decent rocker on the foot, which is really nice. So as far as mass production 6-inch figures go, this is one of the best articulated Iron Man figures we have ever gotten. He's absolutely fantastic. And I honestly can't tell you which one is better, the Mark 42 or the Iron Patriot. So let's take a look at him. Sorry, I know I said we were going to take a look at Iron Patriot, but right before we do that, I just wanted to show off, one of the poses you can get this guy in. Like I said, talking about the articulation, he's just an absolutely fantastically articulated figure. This is absolutely one of the best Iron Man figures that we've ever gotten. I would love for them to take this buck and then maybe retool some of the other Iron Man figures from the first few movies. I'd love like a Mark 7 from the Avengers. I'd love to get my hands on like a Mark 4, maybe a Mark 5 with this buck. It may be a little bulky for the Mark 5, but this is absolutely fantastic. I just love this pose. This is probably how he's going to go on my shelf. Just absolutely fantastic. Now, let's look at him in one more flight pose just to see how well this guy articulates. Okay, now, honestly, this may be how this guy goes on my shelf. This pose is just sick as it can be. Just look at that. This is a mass market figure. I'm telling you that between the paint apps and the articulation and the sculpting, and this is just a fantastic Iron Man figure. He's fantastic. This is probably how he's going to go on my shelf. So, yeah, okay. Now let's take a look at Iron Patriot, also known as War Machine 2.0. Okay, taking a look at War Machine, or Iron Patriot, and I can tell you right off the bat, like with the eyes of the Mark 42, the eyes and the arc reactor here are going to be my biggest point of contention when it comes to the paint apps. They're really yellow. I would have preferred them be white. I know that would have blended in with the silver maybe a little too much, but I think I still would have rather preferred them be white than this creamy, weird yellow color. As far as articulation goes, he's pretty much exactly like the Mark 42, so we're not going to go through articulation. I just really want to just show off some of the finer details of the sculpting and the paint apps on this figure. But you'll see these are actually hinged, and they are connected to the shoulder, so you do get a fair amount of motion out of the arm, but not as much as with the Mark 42. But these are sort of on a hinge, which is kind of nice. It would have been nice if they were attached to the shoulder and you could go all the way around, but unfortunately they are not. The only point of articulation that I think is hindered is you can see here how the hand is on an up-down swivel where you can go down, but because of the bulk of his arm pad or the gauntlet here, you can't actually get the hands to tilt up. And as you can see, like with the Mark 42, the repulsor cannons on the hands are not painted. Get a really nice, and you can hear that ratchet joint in there at the torso. So that's nice and stiff, which is really nice. And same range of motion down in the legs. So like I said, we're not going to go through the articulation, but I will give you like an up and down on some of the detail. The paint apps are just absolutely stunning on this figure. The paint on this figure may actually be better than the Mark 42, if that's even possible. And you do, like, because he does have the larger legs, you do have some motion in the ankle, but not a lot. Not as much as with the Mark 42. So here, let me show you the back, because this is one of the things that's different, is he does have the shoulder cannon. Now, I really hate how this thing is just a flat black plastic. I really wish this thing had some silver accents to it, or maybe some blue accents. I honestly don't remember. It was only used in one scene in the film, from what I remember, and I can't recall if it was painted the same color as the blue and silver or whatever. But you are able to sort of spin this thing around. And you can see that it does have a plug right here, a little hole for this to kind of, you can unplug this and put it on this side, but it only goes on one shoulder. It doesn't articulate right here, so it only looks good over the left shoulder. It doesn't look good hanging over the right shoulder. So why they give you the ability to move it, I'm not sure, but it does look really cool, and you can tilt it downward, rotate it, or well, you can see how easily it comes off, but you can actually rotate it around and then rotate the gun up so it stores sort of more flat, across his back, so it's not as noticeable. But that's really neat. So let's see if this guy can pose up as really good as the Mark 42. So as you can see, he does pose up really well. I would say he's not as posable, even though he has pretty much the exact same points of articulation. I would say that he's probably not as posable as the Mark 42, and I think that's simply because of the extra added bulk in his shoulders and in his mostly in his legs, the thighs and the calves, because of the extra bulk on this guy. So, but he does pose up quite nicely. I don't think I'll put him in a flight pose like this on my shelf. I think he's more of a, for me, War Machine's always been more of a land-based vehicle, more like a tank. He likes to get planted and then just unleash firepower. So I think he may take a more standing stance on my shelf. But let's see if we can get him in a really good flying pose. Okay, again, same thing. I mean, he does look really nice in this pose, but not as articulated as the Mark 42. His head doesn't rotate backwards or upwards, I should say, as well as the Mark 42 does, and you can't really get the feet sort of pointed outward or downward as much as the Mark 42. So I will have to concede that where the Mark 42 probably has the better articulation, I think the War Machine probably has the better paint apps. So, you really can't go wrong with either one of these figures. I really hope we get a repaint of this guy in the future, and they give us, what we didn't see in the film, but like the true War Machine 2.0, the gunmetal gray and silver accents. I would definitely be picking that guy up if we ever get that release. I think it would be fantastic. But you can't go wrong with either of these guys. They're absolutely fantastic. They are two of the best Iron Man figures, especially being mass market, that we've gotten in a really, really long time. So the Ungrownups, we thoroughly recommend these guys. So, as always, we hope you guys dug the videos. If you did, just please like, comment, or subscribe. Be sure to check out our podcast, which is new every 2 weeks. You can download that at iTunes or stream it right off of ungrownups.com. And be sure to join in the conversation at facebook.com/ungrownups. And until next time, peace.